So let's talk about a rather interesting Games Workshop article summarising releases for a year of chaos, and talk about some expectation versus reality when Games Workshop uses that as a throwaway phrase in one of their community articles. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today Games Workshop dropped a maybe slightly surprising article, not necessarily because it was telling us anything interesting, but it seems to be a Games Workshop response article to people criticising them for the year of chaos that they mentioned a couple of times. Something that maybe feels like it's almost a response to internet discussion, but at the same time kind of legitimizes the year of chaos as a thing that was and has happened in the first place. I feel like you could read the article in different ways, either at face value, literally going by the words they've said, or see it as a bit of response and banter with the community pretty much, and all the discourse that went around with their very vaguely announced year of chaos they did use as a phrase, but didn't really make any specific promises around it. Basically what they've done is they've got an article that just showcases their Chaos releases over the past year, all the ones for Warhammer 40k and Age of Sigmar, starting with the Chaos Space Marine Codex and the two Lords that came out last May, going through things like their Skaven, their Slaves to Darkness and Emperor's Children range releases, and finishing off with the Deity Legion Codexes and the new upgrade sprue to build the Knight Ruinator. At least from the article they say that the year of chaos started sometime last year, deliberately being vague as to whether or not it was May for Codex Chaos Space Marines, June for the Skaven release with the Horned Rat ascending to the Chaos Pantheon, when they actually first used the phrase in September 2024, linking their own article. At least by this article being put in retroactively, they do imply that it both refers to Age of Sigmar and 40k. I guess by doing a year in review, that certainly goes with the year of chaos now being over in theory. And if they're only doing a year in review now, going up to releases just now, that means at least according to this article, the year of chaos was around about starting last June-ish, around about when they say. As mentioned though, certainly feels like a lot of this might be sort of retroactive interpretation, and trying to somewhat align themselves with what the community felt might happen. The year of chaos, as they point out in their own article, was a phrase they used in basically a teaser and hype article for their Warhammer Day reveal show last year. This was in September. The exact phrase that they used was, "This is the year of chaos as evidenced by the Great Horn Rat joining the big leagues of the pantheon of the Chaos Gods in Warhammer Age of Sigmar and becoming a fully fledged ruinous power." In the same article, they promised some heretical reveals at their preview show to follow on. Those reveals did include Age of Sigmar, but didn't state this to be limited to that. The article title was "Get Ready for Chaos, Warhammer Day 2024 is coming." That one basically stating that the reveals for Chaos hadn't come yet, and they made the majority of the preview at least somewhat Chaos themes, having some nerdling plushies on the table and things like that, and it was the first preview that we officially got teased the Emperor's Children for Warhammer 40k. They showed off a Dark Mechanicum army release for Legions Imperialis, a Skaven team for Underworld, and along with the Slaves for Darkness army set for Age of Sigmar. I guess that was maybe the driving factor behind them focusing on Chaos for that preview, given that it was the single biggest release. Plenty of people, including myself, were certainly interested in the phrase Year of Chaos though. Games Workshop don't really give us a massive amount of clues as to what's coming next in Warhammer 40k, so if you get Warhammer community using phrases like that, it could be a small teaser as to what's coming next. I commented on that myself when I did a reaction to the teaser video, and to be honest, my main first reaction to that was that people are probably going to overinterpret this. I feel like whenever Games Workshop has said there's going to be a year of something or a month of something, it just means there's going to be more releases for that faction or that set of factions than usual. And I feel like just about every time they've ever said something like that in the past, people have wound up being disappointed in one way or another. I remember when they said that there was going to be an Orktober. People assumed that the Orcs would be getting releases all through that month. They did get 6 buggy kits, but when that was all that they had released, people weren't happy. Even if 6 model kits is quite a lot for an army to get, it maybe wasn't helpful to every Orc player if you didn't want to play Speed Freaks. When they used that phrase, my first interpretation was that it probably means a period of more Chaos releases than usual, not an entire year worth of releases. Those releases will be spread across Sigmar and 40k. It was clear that they were referencing Sigmar due to the Great Horn Rat, though I did assume that they meant a calendar year, given that they hadn't given us any hint as to when it would start. My guess was that it was probably going to be 2025, and that did seem to fit with what we knew of Warhammer 40k at that time, given that we knew that it would be somewhere around 4 to 6 more Chaos books coming out in 2025. At this point we didn't know whether Chaos Demons was getting a codex, and Emperor's Children hadn't even been announced, but either way the maths added up that even if Games Workshop did literally nothing out of the ordinary, would get more Chaos releases than normal. Obviously, the internet being the internet, people latched onto it regardless. The phrase got shared all around social media, and it became a bit of a meme for people to post Year of Chaos down in the comments on YouTube or Reddit or whatever, doing so literally whenever something else was revealed for another faction. This one certainly felt like it was just a way to guarantee a bit of disappointment and annoyance for me. Clearly Games Workshop weren't going to release nothing but for an entire year. though given that several Chaos factions got some kind of token minimal releases, and then there were armies like Deathcore and Eldari getting really quite big cool range refreshes, you could see why it was grating a bit to plenty of people, even if there was the big launch for the Emperor's Children in the end. I feel like this was almost bound to happen though, even if Games Workshop did state it was a thing just in passing in one article, and didn't even revisit it after that, at least not in any enormous way. I think maybe what kept it going was that it was just really clear that Chaos were getting a bunch of stuff on the horizon. In their slightly confusing roadmap, they had 2025 as the first 3 codexes, and then special Chaos treats listed for later. And we did start to get all the core reveals for the Emperor's Children, first Fulgrim, and then the wider Emperor's Children release at the Adepticon reveals, I think it was. And given that people had been talking about it a bit, it all felt like affirmation that it was indeed happening as a thing. Games Workshop didn't push or revisit the concept much at all. There's just one other one that people tend to cite as a source for it, and they mentioned the phrase in passing in an Army of Prey promo article in February 2025. They had a bunch of armies shown off, and one of their community team did a Chaos-themed army, stating because it's the year of Chaos, we decided to create a monument to the ruinous powers with Slaves of Darkness entry. And again, even if it was a mention in passing, I feel like in the face of having lots of Chaos books coming up for pre-order, that was another objective thing that you could point to that Games Workshop had stated the year of Chaos was a thing. I feel like after it got talked about quite so much in the YouTube comments though, people were maybe getting a bit tired of it used whenever there was another model reveal or something different. Reddit thread that had a whole bunch of upvotes and interest that basically stated that it only applies to 2024 and Age of Sigmar. I feel like that wasn't unreasonable to say that it was Sigmar given the Horn Rat pictures and the 2 mentions both referencing Age of Sigmar. It feels like the 2024-25 thing didn't really work, given that we literally only heard the phrase 2 times at that point. One of them was in 2024 and one was in 2025, both of them saying that it's the year of Chaos now. It certainly seemed right that it wasn't specifically promising anything in 2025 though, or necessarily even anything for Warhammer 40k, even if whether or not 2025 was a year of Chaos, it seemed a little bit irrelevant to me, as we were going to be getting a whole bunch of Chaos codexes and releases anyway. I did notice I personally got some criticism in the comments for that one though. I certainly did talk about Games Workshop having used the phrase, that's maybe a little bit annoying, that the only things I said about it were don't overinterpret this and it won't be a big deal. So I certainly wasn't trying to hype it up even though Games Workshop had said it as a phrase. Then I think shortly after this Reddit thread, Kirioth made a great video summarising the whole internet reaction to the 2 uses of the Year of Chaos, and then also all the reactions that seemed to have thought that they'd heard it on a stream somewhere. I'll link his video below, well worth a watch for examining the specific examples and the discussion around it. In any case though, now Games Workshop's article feels like it's a reaction to the overall discourse around the Year of Chaos. I feel like they're basically saying that regardless of whether or not it was a thing to start with, look at all the Chaos things that we've released in the last 12 months, perhaps overall stating maybe if we want to call this the Year of Chaos then we legitimately can. I guess seem to be primarily going by their own article as a theoretical starting point in September, as that was the first time that the phrase was used. It is kind of weird though, by doing this one and summarising a year worth of Chaos releases, they actually kind of legitimise it as being a thing in the first place. I feel like you probably might get some people for which this proves that it was a thing in the first place, and others that think it's just Games Workshop responding to all the talk about it. Certainly if you take them at face value, they basically said the Year of Chaos was the last 12 months. From the article, they basically showed off all the things that they've had over that time, starting with Codex Chaos Space Marines and then 2 Lords, then the whole Age of Sigmar Skaven release along with Skaventide. Then they had the Sigmar Slave to Darkness Battle Tome and the ranged release around the Dark Oath for that, the Emperor's Children 4 Army release, which was a pretty big deal for 40k, a new Primarch returning and new Noise Marines after they've been waiting it for a long time, plus plenty more kits and a new Codex. Then the 3 Chaos Deity Codex releases, 1 unit for each, along with their battle forces and combat patrols. Another couple of small releases, the Goremongers for Kill Team, and the Fun Plaguebearer models for Underworlds, and then the Chaos Knights with their Knight Ruinator, and I guess the Houndpack Lance. They maybe tried to tenuously stretch it as well and saying surely that the biggest Chaos release is just around the corner with the upcoming Saturnine box for Horus Heresy. I feel like that one maybe does feel like a bit of a stretch saying that's for Chaos, given that you can equally use it for Loyalists, but I guess it's not like it's something that Chaos can't use for one of their game systems at the same time. Overall feels like between the whole thing there were really quite a lot of Chaos releases, 3 big army release waves for Slaves of Darkness and Emperor's Children and Skaven. I'll admit it does maybe feel a bit weird to me to count Skaven alongside the Chaos races, perhaps a slightly more recent thing as the fantasy setting goes. And then objectively, if you count the Codex Chaos Space Marine release, that's basically every single Chaos Codex that comes out in Warhammer 40k within that timeline, each getting at least 1 model release, a couple of them getting 2, 5 new combat patrols and 6 new battle forces. So just objectively put together, there has been quite a lot of stuff. The main reason that people just generally weren't too happy about the Chaos releases though, and then we're getting increasingly salty about the idea of a Year of Chaos, is that basically if you collect any one out of the Warhammer 40k Chaos factions, odds are that you've got a pretty minimal release. Generally every army gets their codex, a combat patrol, a battle force, and a new model. So I guess when you tease the idea that there's going to be more stuff than normal coming, if you wind up having 6 out of the 7 Chaos armies now only get the bare minimum that was expected and no more, then at least for 40k it doesn't really feel like it's a big deal thing. And the idea of a Year of Chaos is going to feel like a joke when you're seeing other armies get full range releases. It could have a worse feeling as well if you didn't particularly like your individual faction release. I feel like things like the Thousand Suns robots and the World Eater Slaughter Band had a lot of people who weren't exactly overwhelmed with those. The Chaos Knight one was just an upgrade sprue. And Chaos Demons maybe had the worst of all, getting no codex and raising concerns about their very existence in the future of 40k come 11th edition. And of course no miniature release alongside them and their combat patrol box taken away. It just feels that overall it's very possible for Games Workshop to have lots of Chaos releases, but any one faction bar Emperor's Children not really get anything out of the ordinary. Aside from Age of Sigmar army release waves, most 40k Chaos players aren't really going to feel like they've had a Year of Chaos for their own individual faction. Chaos releases are quite a broad thing, and basically it is a massive chunk of their armies across a broad range of settings. Let me know what you make of the Games Workshop article though. Were people getting too excited about a couple of uses of just one tantalising phrase that implied big releases for the Dark Gods? And in terms of model releases, do you feel like what Games Workshop's come out with in the last 12 months is enough to justify calling it a Year of Chaos or not? I look forward to hearing all your thoughts down in the comments as always. If you enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, while certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming. I do tend to post new ones just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked in the video description down below. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with the chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link's down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.